Hello everyone.
Hi.
Welcome to the forest. We are sitting here today to begin a series that we both have a deep passion to share with everybody. We want to talk about astrology, and we would like to make a whole series for every sign. So today we would like to just begin with the first sign. We felt it was a good entrance point. So today we will be talking about Aries, which is also great because we are going to have a full moon in Aries just in a couple of days, but these videos will be timeless, so whenever they find you, you will be able to connect to the wisdom and the knowledge. So maybe first off, you would like to know who we are. My name is Jenny.
And my name is Federico.
And I have been studying astrology. I have began studying it after I was studying the tarot. Both are ancient forms of understanding the soul, the self, understanding our world, and how the movements in this world are revealing themselves to us. And the tarot for me is an extension of the astrology, so I wanted to get deeper into the knowledge of astrology to connect myself then again deeper with the tarot. And Federico has been studying astrology for a long time. Maybe you want to share something about your path.
Yeah, I've been studying deeply astrology for almost 5 years, and I've been studying it from the praxis. So connecting different cosmovisions. I come from South America, so it's understanding the language and the dance between the archetypes from the native histories. And these histories are from all around the world. So I've been just doing that, becoming into the Western way, but also through the native way, which just has been allowing me to feel that this is a really coherent dance. And it's an amazing language to talk.
Yeah, I also feel maybe it's good to mention that the way we study astrology, we also take on, is it called an evolutionary approach? We include mythology and really try to understand the archetypes also through the stories that have been told and retold throughout history. Different stories that, maybe tell the same essence of something that wants to be shared through different variations of a story that we can find throughout many cultures, throughout many histories. And so we will also be mentioning some of these aspects as they are how we interpret and how we also understand. Maybe, Federico, do you want to share what astrology can be used for? Why should one be interested in astrology, or what are the benefits that we get from studying such a topic? Or what are the benefits that anyone can get from connecting with us right now, listening and learning something new about the Zodiac?
Astrology is the connection between the movement of stars, the geometric dance that is happening around us, but also is the understanding of how the history of the humanity has been told from the understanding of archetypes. So when we go into astrology, we find one of the more precise tools to understand how is the world and the universe dancing from the perspective of the planet Earth. And from there we can just go really into specifics. Really into a specific date, really into a specific experience, really into a specific someone. We can just melt everything within astrology because it's infinite.
Yeah, for me, astrology is also really a tool to understand some of the current energies, how they are unfolding. And when we take the time to understand that, it helps us bring new perspectives into ourselves. So it may help us find a different perspective of a mindset or a challenge that we've been going through, because I believe that everything we see in the outside world is a reflection of all of the things happening in the inside world. So how the planets are interacting with each other, also as the characters of these planets are interacting, or as you said, dancing with each other, we can understand which aspects of ourself that are represented by them are also dancing with each other right now, and it may help us find some insights. So for me, that's also really what excites me about astrology, is diving into those stories and relating them also to myself and my current experience. It helps me feel like I'm able to understand myself better. But sometimes it also makes me even take the world or the happenings of the world with a little bit more playfulness, and the fun and the joy, the easiness of storytelling. Sometimes helps to relax through certain happenings and situations. Do you feel similar?
Oh, totally. Astrology just keeps you grounding, because you simply understand why like that, why right now, but also you are going to understand many patterns of things that are just part of our experience as human beings. Things that happened 7 years ago are connected with things that are unfolding right now, because it's a geometrical dance. Always there is like a reflection of something that was, that is going to be, that is happening right now, but also that goes totally beyond time.
Maybe we could start by quickly just explaining for people who don't have any knowledge about astrology how the system is kind of structured, how it is divided. I don't know if you wanna share first, and then maybe if you miss something or if I have something to add, I can.
Of course.
I can.
Well, systems to study astrology, there are many, but it depends of where you're going to look through it. But from my approach, astrology is like a playwright. It's like a theater playwright in which archetypes are meeting in different moments and they are having a different interaction. So we can talk about beauty represented as an Aphrodite, but then we have the warrior, Mars, and it's like how they are when they are best friends. And how they are when
But
they are
so
not
just
cool.
as a general information, there are 12 different archetypes.
That is right.
Yeah.
And each of them expresses through different ways. But it's a dance.
So the main zodiac wheel, how it is calculated, and maybe many of you have also or already have knowledge about natal charts. Maybe you've received a natal chart reading. Maybe you've never heard about it at all.
Right.
But the natal chart is the position in that the sky is in the moment when you are born. It's kind of like just a picture of that moment.
Yeah.
And it's a key insight to many of the things that were present in the moment you were born. So if you see that as a metaphor, with the perspective that what happens in the outside is a reflection of the inside, then it can also tell you a lot about how your inside world was in that moment. So it must have been a really impactful point in your life.
Yeah, it's a wheel. So it's a continuity of something. Natal chart is right now, like the planets, the asteroids, right now they are projecting towards us, towards you, towards me, towards a specific species, towards a specific meeting. Even is a reflection that is always ongoing. It's a conversation that can be seen from different perspectives, witnessing there, but also a collective one that is implicated in a lot of things worldwide.
And so also we have the natal chart, which many people are familiar with. And the other thing that many people are familiar with or talking about are the astrological transits, which is kind of what is happening in the sky right now. So also the interaction between how the planets are in the sky right now and how the planets are interacting with your natal chart can also give you some key insights of those of the unfoldings of your life, of your soul. But I think it would be important just to generally sketch out how the system is based. So it's based upon 12 houses, 12 signs, and also the corresponding planets. With the
and
signs
asteroids and mathematical points. And there are multiple asteroids and multiple mathematical points. So it depends of where you want to read. You want to go general, everything goes for general also. But it's, as I said at the beginning, there are multiple systems. So we have 12 houses, 12 signs, but not the houses are seen the same way in every place of the world. Right now here we're in Germany, and in Germany some houses that are places in the sky in which usually the signs are mostly of the time. From here, from the North Hemisphere, some houses are just smaller. So they don't have the same behavior for you that you were born here that for me. Because
you're talking about degrees here.
Yeah, that's right.
So the houses are divided by degrees, and how big or small the house is you're referencing the degrees.
Yeah, it depends of how close you are to the line of the equator. So 0 degree, then all of the houses are equal. But more at the north, some are not going to be like that.
Okay, I think we for now, so that it won't be too overwhelming, I think we have so much that we can talk about astrology that we can have an entire course just about different house systems and different ways of calculating. Today we want to start with just talking about the first sign. Of course, the sign is also connected to the first house, so we may be mentioning things about house number 1 or about the planets that are connected to the sign. But in general, each sign is connected to 1 month, kind of also correlating with the changes of the seasons. It also depends on where in the world you are living, how you experience that. But maybe we should start with the first sign. Which is a beautiful sign. It's the sign of Aries.
Is the primordial spark. Is the first thought, the first fire, which is masculine. So this fire that comes with all of the energy, all of the potential, it does not hesitate in how it comes. It simply comes. So we can understand Aries as the beginning of the Big Bang. This boom. And after that boom, is not Aries anymore. It's just the starting point. Vroom, you just turn it on.
I have also studied that, as you said, it's like the beginning point. So it's kind of like that first spark of consciousness. It's that the birth of consciousness. And you cannot, like, for me, I always look at things from different levels. So there's like a macrocosmic level where it represents the moment of the Big Bang, and also there's a microcosmic level that maybe is the self. So it's also your individual moment of birth here when you arrive to this world. But it also can just be the starting point when you have that first intent, that first moment of willpower to do a task or to start a project, or just to realize something, or to want something. For me, it's that first moment of intent forming, willpower forming, as it's the birth of consciousness.
Everything that is in the planet Earth has a starting point. So everything is Aries in the moment in which it begins. Everything that is spinning, Aries is spinning.
And even you could take on the perspective, because it's a wheel, so it means that technically it doesn't have a beginning, right? So also one could consider Aries to be the very first sign, but one could also consider the last sign, which is Pisces, and we'll talk more about that in the video about Pisces, that Pisces could also be the first sign and Aries would also be the second sign. So
Somehow,
what
yeah.
I mean by that is that there was already something happening before that moment of birth, like in the womb when the child is already forming inside before it is then born. And so yeah, I like to also consider the things that happen before a sign, the things that happen after a sign,
Yeah.
to complete or to have the story more full, more whole.
Yeah. Then the dance will be from the thought of what was before the explosion.
Yeah.
All of the composition. So that big dream in which the gods and goddesses, before they were gods and goddesses, they just asked themselves, what if? And all of that what if, boom, just came as Aries.
Yeah. I feel like that's what happens with Aries when we consider all of the meanings and definitions of Pisces. That, for those who don't know, it contains a lot of the collective subconscious, the collective divine realm, the collective spiritual awareness. And so it also represents the ending. If we take Aries as a starting point, it represents the ending of one cycle, with Aries birthing the start of a new cycle. So also in your personal life, to me, that represents just the culmination of awareness of something, for you to have that experience where you finally break through into change. So for me, Aries is not only a moment of birth, but a moment of rebirth. Right?
And it's Aries to the human experience. Is something that we can aim. Like, there I'm going. I'm going to take all of this with me and I go with it. But from outside of the human experience, Aries is not empathic. It just goes with everything that comes. Aries is not going to ask you, hey, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pass through here. No. It's just going to be Aries.
Let's maybe talk about some of the key characteristics of Aries. So we have the element, which is fire, but it's cardinal fire, which is one of three. It's cardinal, mutable, cardinal fixed, and the mutable elements. And what distinguishes cardinal fire from the other fires?
A cardinal fire is the initiative. Is the first fire that is bringing this primordiality. A mutable fire, that in this case a fixed one will be Leo, and a mutable will be Sagittarius. A fixed is a fire that is already established, or that is establishing itself. So it's the one that says, oh, I'm here. What does it mean to be here? What is available? Like, this fire, what? That's a fixed one. And a mutable one is like, all right, I've been here for a while. Do I want to stay here, or I want to go somewhere else? Do I want to be the fire that I've been? And then just continues to the next cycle. Again, the cardinal, like, starting point, is just the samsara.
I also once heard someone say that cardinal fire is kind of like the beginning point. It's the moment when the fire is lit, for example. So then if the fire isn't continued to be fed, then it just kind of burns out. And that sometimes Aries also carries this energy of quick to start things, but then it kind of just, fades away or dissolves, or it just wants to start the next thing, the new thing. So it's just always the starter energy, but it's not so much the finisher energy as with other signs, for example. And that it really depends on how you feed this fire, how you fuel. So if you have a lot of Aries energy in your chart, that it also depends on how you refocus yourself and help yourself to reshift and to reignite that passion, that desire that you may have had at the beginning. I feel that that's like a key quality of Aries, connected to the element of fire.
Is that Aries is the way in which it is. If you say to Aries, don't be, Aries is just going to contain. But there's a moment in which, like the movement in Aries is just in continuity. It has to aim its energy somewhere. And this fire is always wanting to go somewhere. It cannot
so it
stay
needs
there.
To be aimed.
Yeah, it needs to be aimed. If you have a lot of energy of Aries, most probably you can tell that if you cannot be there doing, then most probably you are going to be there or there because there's something of fire that wants to be somewhere.
Yeah, at this point I want to mention also that when we speak about a sign and we speak about the qualities of a sign, we are not referencing people who have the sun maybe in the sign, because I feel like astrology often is just interpreted from a quite narrow and due to that limiting perspective, where there's a lot of focus on the sun sign. A lot of the other aspects are not taken into consideration, and I feel like that's where a lot of the misunderstandings come in, of people feeling like they don't relate at all to a sign or to a chart, and a lot of prejudice also comes in, of people with certain signs being like this and like that. And for me it's important to emphasize also that it's really like such a complex assortment of things coming together that you could literally study for years and years. And so I also want to encourage people when they dive deeper into these topics, and I do want to encourage people to also do their own research, to not be discouraged by negative aspects or qualities they may find about a sign that they feel connected with or that they have a lot in their chart. Because I also feel, and it's the same way with the tarot, that the negative and the positive are always both there. And it's just about finding out how the negative is showing right now, how the positive is showing, but that there is no sign that is better than another sign, and there is no sign that is only good or only bad.
And in fact, we are all of the signs.
We have all of the chart is in our chart. Like we have the whole wheel. Everyone has 12 houses and 12 signs.
And all of the planets and all of the asteroids. Just as a different proportion.
They're just in very unique and individual compositions.
Then Aries is this starting point. When you look to a chart, you see that Aries is usually told as the ascendant. That is the place in which the sun is rising. So Aries is the first thing that we see, in a sense.
This is why it's called the rising sign or the ascendant sign.
That is right. That there is the energy of Aries in the ascendant on the rising, but it depends of what sign is in there. What do we do to don't get lost into that? Simply, Aries in every sign has an expression. That is the planet that represents it. In this case, Mars. The sign itself, but also the house. And the house for Aries is the first one. So it's the one that is at the rising.
So that is the natal house of Aries.
That is right.
Yeah, and that means also that Aries feels very comfortable in this house naturally. So people also who have Aries in their first house, because this will change for everyone, they will have Aries in a very comfortable position. But also they have the specialty of their chart that if Aries is in the first house, and then Taurus is in the second house, and Gemini is in the third house, every single sign will be in its natal house. So that might be interesting to experience,
Yeah.
but that also depends on the house system you're using and if the house size are all
Yeah.
like exactly the
And
same
where you were born.
degree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like it would be good to finish covering the main characteristics of Aries from like the fundamentals of the element, which is cardinal fire, as we mentioned. Like the main characteristic, which is kind of the beginning point,
Yeah.
the birth of consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
The season, which is in this case spring,
Yeah.
and also the ruling planet,
Mm-hmm.
which is, as you just mentioned, Mars. How are the ruling planets and the signs connected?
There are planets. We can see it from many perspectives. If we want, we can just think about the chemistry and the physics of the planet. It is connected with the nature of a planet. We're talking about archetypes, and how we connect it. Just think of a playwright. There is a character that fits better to certain clothing, to certain expressions. But also, this character feels better in certain spaces.
So what would those be for Aries and Mars?
You can think of a warrior.
A warrior energy.
Yeah. So Mars will be the warrior, this energy that is ready to go. And Aries will be the tools of the warrior. Not necessarily a sword, a bow with an arrow, but those skills that are required to go into it.
So would that include psychological tools like the
Yeah.
intention to fight?
Exactly.
Or the self-confidence to go into the battle?
Yeah, or the impulsivity. Or also this awareness of the fact that you are into something. So you're going there.
Yeah, in general, I feel Aries carries this energy of impulses. Like the first impulse of life, the impulse of an idea of an awareness,
Yeah.
the impulse of the warrior going to the battleground.
Yeah.
And I also have heard often that impulsivity of Aries is something good and something bad, depending on the situation and the scenario. I feel like sometimes it may be really helpful to have that, just do it mentality, to just try something out. And of course, sometimes we learn through being that. So for me, Aries also carries this like young, kid-like spirit of just trying things out. And also, if you take the whole wheel as a perspective of lessons that your soul is learning through its experience, you can view Aries as kind of the beginning point of where really not that many challenges have yet been learned. And that has two consequences, of course. One being that maybe there may be a little bit of naivety, or they may be a little bit of overestimating yourself because you have not learned yet the consequences of certain things, a lot of trial and error. But on the upside, it may also be wonderful because, many of us in our lives, we have been disappointed and then we lose self-confidence, so we don't try things anymore. And I feel like that Aries energy is that energy of you haven't experienced so many failures yet, so you still have that belief of a child that you could do anything, you could be anything, you can just try things out. And that's kind of this young childlike pioneering aspect also.
So it's this innocence of everything is always in the starting point. Like I'm always in the beginning. Oh, all right, now there, because it's always a new try that is and a starting point. Always from the perspective of Aries.
Yeah, that reminds me of something that gave me an insight of people who have a lot of this Aries energy, and maybe they're struggling with continuing something because the example was made of Aries being like that person who like really starts something and is like so passionate and has like puts 100% into something from the beginning, but then quickly gets bored and just kind of fades away. And so it might be interesting, for example, if Aries energy drives you to study something by reading a book, and then you're super passionate about reading that book, then maybe it gets kind of boring after a while and you lose that momentum. So then maybe it would be nice to continue the same topic, what you're studying, but move to a podcast, or if that gets boring, then you move to a video, and if that gets boring, you move back to the book, but just to have kind of this like elements of change to kind of keep that feeling of new and fresh excitement going.
From there, if we think of someone that loves reading and that has a lot of energy of Aries, most probably this person loves reading short stories, or likes to read adventure stories that are just like, oh, now that, because it's just like, I want to feel that I'm getting into an adventure all the time. I want to feel that I'm able to give myself into what's going on now and then. So it's super fun. But that is from the experience of the human being. Because Aries outside of the human being is just this fire that just comes and clash. Like, I'm not going to ask if it's the moment for me to come. Are you comfortable? No, it's the moment, and it just comes and may clash.
I like that you just mentioned Aries through the lived experience as a human being, and to kind of differentiate that from the Aries energy outside of the human experience, because I think it's a good reminder that these energies, as they come through us, through our bodies, through us as humans, through us as individuals, through us as personalities, that they may be going through some filters. So that this raw divine Aries energy isn't always attached to how it unfolds through human beings, but that it is a more general, a more essence type of energy, a more underlying or overarching energy.
So we see all the stage of Aries, that will be the house number 1 in everything. Like, Aries will be that moment in which the eagle is going for another bird. Just that moment in which but we can see it also in the quotidianity of human being. I want to have a conversation with my best friend, but I don't know how to get into that topic. The starting point of that topic that has to be touched is the energy of Aries. That, like, this happened. Oh, that's energy of Aries.
So what we're doing right now also is getting really into the applied astrology of how do these things unfold in everyday life, where are these things noticeable, or how does this archetype show up in a situation of our daily life, or how does it show up in our interactions with ourselves, with other people, with different scenarios. And from a general perspective of the characteristics of Aries, I feel it's also important to think a little bit about how we can already extract some of that knowledge that we have just shared of this first impulse, this beginning, this starting something new, from different things connected. For example, the symbol that is used for Aries, and the animal that is kind of used to represent Aries, because I feel like it helps me personally remember some things if I'm able to like re-extract the knowledge myself by looking at these symbols. And I also feel that's what symbolism and imagery gives us. It's one of the benefits, is that it connects with the subconscious, and then we are able to understand and to extract information from it. So the animal connected with Aries is the ram.
Yeah. Which has the huge horns and that is ready to invest.
Yeah.
And that is just like to care for the place in which I am, to care for what I represent. I'm ready to go to the battle whenever it's required. So my head, because astrology can be understood from several places. From medical astrology, Aries is the head, everything that is in the head, but it's also your blood pressure, as example. So it's this energy of which is the ram.
Is it like when you get really angry and then your face gets all red and you feel all of the heat in your head and your pressure starts rising and you just want to run against a wall?
Yeah, that is Aries.
Because you mentioned it earlier, something about quick to start, quick to also this like quick temperedness that Aries energy brings with it, of being quick to maybe not react, but being quick to act.
Yes.
Acting quickly on an impulse. So maybe if you feel that anger and you have an impulse, then a lot of Aries energy may push to move forwards with that. Yeah, and also like the ram and the horn of the ram, when you blow through it, historically and probably today also, this is used as like a sound of commencement of something beginning, like the games are beginning, or the battle is beginning, or the food is ready, or like a signal of starting, right?
Yes. And the ram is, as many animals that have this energy of Aries in their way of acting, it is just ready to take control. Like to possess. Then is this energy that penetrates, that is just ready to penetrate whenever it's the moment to respond to what's going on around. So Aries is penetration, and it can be understood from many perspectives. Penetration of a new idea, penetration of a new meeting, a new encounter, is the penetration of everything.
Thoughts in the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Maybe we should mention that some of the, or all of the signs are usually also related to a certain polarity, a certain energy, which we call the masculine and feminine energies, but we're not talking about men or women here. We're more just talking about the primordial energies of dual forces, one which is more piercing through, and the other one which is more containing, or the one is acting and one is receiving, which are inside all of us and inside everything. And I'm not quite sure, you probably know this, Aries is carries a masculine energy.
Yes, yeah. It carries the masculine energy of the individuality. So Aries is the ego. Is this that here I am. Here is the energy. So if we look at it from some perspective, no, ego, why do you need let it die, or something like that? But the fact is that ego is Aries. You cannot take Aries out of the place, because somehow we can understand ego as Aries as spring. The flowers starting to sprout. That is an expression of ego. So is this masculine that is caring, that is this caring just with all of the force that is required to care. It's more this force, brutal force, can be understood also.
Yeah, the ego isn't always a bad, or is never just a bad thing from my perspective. It is, we have a lower and a higher ego from my point of view, which relates to the perspective in which we consider things, and also from the point of the ego being a point of self-awareness. It's quite necessary. We need to be aware of something to be able to then have an experience, to be able to then act from that. I think it's really interesting also, considering the the masculine aspect of the sign, also like the ram's horns and this kind of masculine drive forwards, the energy of fire, which fire is also often representing like a masculine force, and of the planet that is ruling Aries, right, which is Mars, and Mars also carries a masculine energy. And I would also like to bring in the opposite perspective, because from an occult point of view, what the occultist does is to always consider kind of the opposite, that which lies hidden beneath what is obvious, which takes on this dualistic perspective of these two things that are contained within the one. And also this duality for me is represented in Aries in many ways, and one of these ways is the feminine energy that I feel is also deeply within Aries. As, for example, the sign, I don't know if you know how this looks, but it's like these ram's horns. They also look very similar to the feminine reproductive system. So also within that sign, it carries both of these energies. It carries this occult opposite view. And also this birthing process is also something deeply, or the whole process of creation, right? It needs both these forces to fully unfold. Also, if you'd consider Aries to be this beginning point, this first point of consciousness, this first moment, or like just a point, which is just like a dot, then you have these two energies that both unfold from there, one in one direction and one in the other direction, creating kind of like a first line, like the base of a shape, of a sacred geometry, of a world, of a physical reality that is forming. So there's also an opposition within that, because Aries, from this perspective, it has both the impulse to create and to move forth into finding expressions, finding forms, to move forwards, to begin, to take forms, to become matter, to become connected to something. And from that impulse, it also has the impulse to then create from that. But at the same time, it also represents the impulse of liberation from form, the impulse of liberation from matter, through that the impulse to destroy and be reborn again. So for me, it carries both of these energies, creating and recreating.
Aries is the sign that represents sports. So this extension of the body aesthetism, this taking shape, because there is something that allows me to take shape into what I decide that I want to become. So it's this decision to shape shift. And after the shape shifting comes like this question of, all right, now how I establish this that I decided to do. So Aries just brings that question. Okay, I want to be that. I'm going to bring all of the impulse of what they may become. And after that is the continuity of Aries, but in another sign. Each sign contains the sign that is before. So what we just like as a little thing, Taurus is the continuity of the Aries idea, but now grounded it. This fire that is just touching the ground and allows the ground to start to sprout. And I would like you to share something that we talked on these days. Is Aries can be understood from histories of mythology as the 12 tasks of Hercules, as example, which is the first task, and how does it connect with what we were sharing?
Yeah, I'll get into that in a moment. I wanted to, before I lose this thought, but good that you're mentioning different ways of studying these signs, because there are different ways of moving into connecting the sign with certain things. So for example, we have the elements, we have the different body parts, as you just mentioned. The head is represented by Aries. It's also this like first moment of when you're born, your head is, it's like the tip of the crown. So also Aries, as I once read it, is the top of the head, or do you feel like it's the whole head?
It is the whole head. But that's why every part of the head is represented by a different shape, like a different planet or a different degree, if we want to go even deep.
But also, why are we mentioning this? Why is it important to understand this? It can or cannot be important. But for example, if you have lots of things going on in your head, you may have issues there. You may even have a disease that you're dealing with or something. Sometimes it can be helpful to connect with these archetypes to kind of get a better understanding or awareness of which types of energies are you having too much of or lacking, or is there an imbalance with your impulsivity? Is there an imbalance with your anger, your aggression, things like that? And it's a huge field of study that I don't feel like we can pack into this video, but I just want to give a small reminder that there's a lot of different ways that you can use information about astrology in your life for many different purposes. Yeah. And also there is a way of studying astrology through the different degrees, which are oftentimes segregated into degrees of 10 that belong together. So they're decans or decanates. Do you want to mention what that means, or like how one decan differs from another? Why are they even being divided in that way?
From mostly Western astrology perspectives, the decanates are expressions of design in a different stage. So 30 degrees per sign. The first degrees.
So each sign is 30 degrees.
Each sign is 30 degrees.
And then after 30 degrees, Taurus comes, which is the next sign. And after 30 degrees, then the next sign.
So the first degrees, to see from 0 to 10, are the expression of your personal way of living through this sign, with yourself.
So it's more focused on your own perspective.
Yeah, the way in which
yourself.
You experience Aries through you is the first 10 degrees. So whatever you have in the first degrees is a representation of how this sign expresses through your own experience. The second decanate in every sign, that will be from the 11 to the 20, represents this expression and interaction from you towards the other, but the other as a close one, towards you, towards she, towards he, towards these, towards this close place. And the third decanate is more the interaction of this expression of design, but in a general perspective. When I'm just meeting with a lot of people or with the whole ecosystem, and it's just deep to understand, because we're talking about 30 degrees, and each degree has a different connection therefore it just has a different expression in life. I may be just experiencing Aries from that expression or that, but it's just meeting also the expression of another sign. It's a beautiful dance that is simple if you read it.
Yeah, thank you. It's beautiful that we're talking about degrees now, because actually for each degree there are channeled symbols. I know that you know this because we talked about it. For those who don't know, they're called the Sabian symbols, and they are 360 different like pictorial symbols that are sentences describing a situation or describing a moment, and they were channeled by one or two people. I can't recall their names right now, but you can find all of this information online. And yeah, it's beautiful for me sometimes to connect with these symbols when there's a certain aspect, a certain transit. For example, when we have a full moon in a certain degree of Aries, then I might go there and read the symbol, and it may help me find some additional like really deep intuitive knowledge. And it's interesting also how through studying this I find that there is so much connected with these symbols and how I perceive that the things are feeling, are unfolding. And from this perspective of the Sabian symbols and how they divide kind of the whole zodiac, I think it's interesting how Aries is divided, because while each degree individually has one symbol connected, so there are 360 symbols, they also divide each sign into two halves. So this method is not so focused on the 3 decans of the first 10, the second, and the last, but more of the first 1 to 15 degrees, and then the second 16 to 30 degrees. And generally there's an overarching process that is also divided by 2, which is one hemisphere and the other hemisphere. And from this perspective, there is kind of like the first hemicycle that contains like the first 6 signs, which is more focused on the process of individualization of the soul. So I also would like to remind at this point that, at least from my perspective, maybe you have a different view, but that the journey through the zodiac and the journey through the signs is the journey of the soul, being on a journey of self-discovery, self-experience, self-awareness. So the first half of these signs bring us through the process of learning different things about individualization. And the second hemisphere of the overarching process will help our soul to make certain experiences that are related to the process of collectivization. And so Aries, as the first sign, is part of the first act of 4. Each hemisphere has 2 acts, so there's act 1, 2, and 3, 4. And the first act is the act of differentiation, which contains 6 scenes. And for those who are interested in getting deeper into this, there's beautiful literature about this where it's all explained. But so Aries is divided into 2 scenes, scenes 1 and 2, and then scene 3 already continues with Taurus. And scene 1 is the scene of desire, which is kind of contains the first 15 degrees of Aries. Scene 2 is the scene of potency, which contains the second, like the rest of the 15 degrees. And I think that's interesting, these first 2 scenes and these words connected with the desire, but then also potency, the potential. And I also think it's beautiful because these words, they connect so easily with things that we all understand. Like, we all have desires, we all have potential to do things, but also they connect and reflect to me back to the topic of how these forces are these forces of creation, and we can also see these forces of creation within within sexuality, within lived and experienced sexuality. And by using that term, I'm referring to everything, not just the physical act between humans, which is a part of that sexuality, but also in a broader sense, anything fertilizing something, be it an idea or a thought. And and that desire, and then that potency of being able to fertilize, and as you said, to then ground into the next sign, which would be Taurus, to then ground into the earth, to then ground into the womb, to then ground into the container.
And if we check in many cosmovisions and cosmologies around the world, we just find that that is this primordial masculine that just brings itself, but that at the same time is just saying, all right, I'm going to meet with the earth, so I cannot be myself anymore, so I can just be the beginning on the way in which I'm coming. And then boom, I'm from the earth. So in many cosmovisions we just find that this expression of Aries is understood as the tree. This tree that is just reaching, and that again is just giving the seed and the fruit to the earth, so it just happens again.
And it's a tree that grows, but that then also branches out. Right?
So it's through the praxis, to the practical way of living, that astrology is best understood from the perspective of this human experience that I am. Just reading the atmosphere, just watching the moment in which coming, you can just start to know, that is Aries. That kid out there, wow, you can just tell that is Aries. And from there, just reading life as a dance of elements, as a dance of archetypes that are always telling a different story, but that you can tell is connected to something else.
Aries, I think we're both feeling this Aries energy right now, where we are like really whew, and feeling the impulse to start this topic, and the impulse to include the next topic, and like I'm feeling all of this impulsivity of Aries. So I think that's something I would like to talk even more about when we move into the planets at a later point in time, because the planets have taught, like studying the planets have taught me the importance of balance. So when we take things into consideration individually, separately, that's great, because we can find some fine details. We can find some really like important and deep understandings, and then to bring these things back together with the greater context, with the whole, with balance. So Aries energy is also usually not just there alone, but it's there in context, in interaction with other energies. And for the planets, for me, it's especially important to balance them. So for example, Mars would be balanced with the feminine counterpart, which is Mars being this energy, or this outwards drive, this intention, this willpower, and also the potential, the ability, the capability, the will. Then, as you said, it needs somewhere to go. It needs to be aimed. And to balance that, the aim needs to come from somewhere, and that's what, for me, then the counterpart to Mars, which is Venus, which represents also the feminine energy, is there for. It creates the aim, the goal. It creates the container for that which wants to be unfolded. So it's also kind of like the heart of the passion, right? So being passionate about something, but why? To understand why, to have a heart connection to it. And so I also feel like this Aries energy yeah, can also be balanced through other aspects.
That's right. And then
Or
that you
not even balanced. It sometimes maybe feels negative, as if there was an imbalance, but to just be complemented.
That is exactly, because what complements Aries is what is right in front of Aries, just across, which is Libra. So Aries is with Libra, and the planet that reigns Libra is Venus. So Aries requires of Libra to be, so Libra requires of Aries to be. But it's just so enjoyable to look through astrology, because it's not only what you have right in front, but what you have next to you or before, yeah, or what is in you, or what of that is you is in others. It's just beautiful, and pretty simple to understand if you just see from where you are standing. Like, astrology, why? Well, astrology however you want it, because it's life itself, but through symbols. It's a dance. So you're dancing with astrology, astrology is dancing with it, you are astrology. So it's just reading it as Aries is that first one. So we're being Aries.
Would you describe Aries as the first breath of life?
Yes.
I'm just thinking that hearing that makes me bring up another tarot association, connected, a card more connected with the first breath of life, but that actually there are other associations.
There are many.
But I think that's also the beauty of studying topics that are kind of occult and esoteric sciences, because there are just a multitude of perspectives you can take on, and there are so many ways of looking at something, and mostly all of them are right, because they're just all a different perspective of the same thing, as the planets are also showing, or the signs. They're just all different aspects, different emphasis of the same thing, which is this kind of original source of creative energy, of awareness, of consciousness that is somehow experiencing itself here, right? That is within me, within you, within the tree that is here in front of us, within the birds, and
within the camera that is recording,
within the fire that is flickering.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And it's beautiful that also there are so many connections between even if it's not called astrology, there may be a story, and it may actually be referencing an astrological sign, even if it's not written there, because it's kind of a continuation of the same knowledge that has just been collected and cultivated over so many centuries and eons of lived and documented experience. That we can find this wisdom hidden really within like every culture. Also, I think from your cultural ancestry, there's a lot of astrology, astrological wisdom being shared, or is that something that is applied?
It is applied. Usually, I come from the mountains of the Andes in South America, and the name of the cosmovision, the territory, is Muisca. And Muisca, which means people, just perceives these signs as tools that are present in your daily life. So, as example, we just not interact only with the 12 signs, but with that is around the sign. It's like a story that is ongoing. So, Mother Earth, which is Taurus, is just next to what we understand in Western as Orion. And Orion is this warrior that is about to go towards the bull that is Taurus. From Muisca cosmovision, we understand Orion as the loom, in which we are going to weave.
A loom for weaving,
We're going to weave these things that the earth requires, that we require as the experience of earth that we are. And so like that is all around the world. Different perspectives that are complementary. Even if they are really opposite, they are complementary. And areas for Muisca is the tree. It's just this masculine that is called Q. It's just divine from wherever you look at.
Yeah, so I feel like also for some people it may be really easy to connect with astrology through the classical zodiac approach that we are describing right now, but maybe for some people it also may be more interesting to connect to a Vedic perspective of astrology, or different characters or connections through other cultures, and everybody has a different way of resonating with something most. So I also want to encourage people to like go after what they are passionate about and to find the wisdom of these archetypes within that, to find out how is this personality or this character Aries, how is that unfolding within the subject matter that I am passionate about. And that could even apply to anything. Like if I'm a scientist studying molecules, it would be super interesting to just think about what molecules contain Aries characteristics, right? What reactions are like very Aries generated reactions, which reactions are more Libra, you know, if you know a lot about these things. But also if you don't know anything about it, to just start being creative and imaginative. And we have so many simple tools. Like if I know that Aries is connected to fire, already from that I can already just imagine what qualities could Aries have, because maybe I'm able to imagine, well, what does a fire do? If I've never seen a fire, maybe I can make a fire and find out in the moment. Or I can think about a fire if I don't have the possibility to make a fire, because I believe that we can also really connect to these things internally. These are all kind of stories and archetypes that we have inside of us. So even if we don't find them in the outside world, or we don't have access to them in the moment, we can still reflect upon them internally.
Yeah, that's right. Aries may have a different story within this human experience that here or there. It's just an archetype that is infinite and that is coming to tell a different story. If we check on traditional Greek or Roman story, Aries or Mars, it has several stories, several interactions, and most likely we're going to be connected to more and a specific one than others, but it comes from the same source, from the same, but we feel more connected to one because that is the story that we just heritage in this embodiment. And just looking inside, because inside is just the reflection of the stars, just like here. So if I want to understand, all right, Aries in me, how? Look at your natal chart as example. Aries is going to be somewhere. Most probably there's going to be something in there. And we can tell just a story. Aries is telling a story in you.
Yeah, one thing that I read recently was also how Aries is connected to like the Brahmanical, I think that's what it's called, Zodiac, which is connected to like the Hindu wisdom, and that there Aries is represented by the deity of Vishnu, and that it's kind of because Vishnu also represents this process of form taking, and that it kind of represents this urge to build form, but also the urge of liberation out of the form. And that also reminds me of this aspect of Aries that is not only the birthing, but it is the rebirthing. And with this rebirthing moment, there has to come like a death before that, right? And so also death as in a transformation, right? The ending of something. And that brings me also to the correlations between the tarot system and the astrology system, which I feel like is such a broad topic that it's much too vast to pack into one video. I think that we could have an entire video or like an entire series of videos just talking about the connections between certain tarot cards and between one sign, because there are many, and there are also many different systems that are used to calculate that. Most of it is based on calculations and sacred geometric patterns. But if we just look at the major arcanum, for example, we usually have the association of, I don't know if many people are familiar with the tarot, but there are 22 major arcanum cards, and each of them also represents kind of this archetype of the soul, of the self, and is kind of like a moment within our story, within our journey, of evolution. So we also consider what is the next moment, the last moment, and there are also moments where the cycle begins again. But a very, very typical classical association with the sign of Aries is the card of the Emperor, which is also called the Sovereign if you use the Egyptian names. And it's the card number 4, so it also, it has a lot of like imagery of the ram on the card. So it's also, and it has a lot of red, it has a lot of this fiery Mars. The color red is associated with Aries, as it is associated also with Mars, right? And so that's like this very, like, strong, representing willpower, representing self-sovereignty, meaning like from the moment that you're born out of the womb, right, you're not attached to the womb anymore. The umbilical cord falls off after some days, and that's the moment when you're self-sovereign. Of course, maybe you're still a child needing some care, but the more you evolve through life, the more sovereign you become. But it's this first point of that cycle of evolution. But also the way that I study tarot, I also take on the occult perspectives, which are also kind of then the opposite, or the not so obvious truths. And from that perspective, the main association with Aries is not necessarily the Emperor card, because the Emperor card represents also this preservation energy, the energy of the continuation of something, and the energy of this it has this very fiery Mars energy, and it's connected to the planet of Mars, but Mars is connected to 2 different signs and to 2 different tarot cards. So the Sovereign is the Mars energy, but it's more the energy of Mars from the occult perspective, as the sign of Scorpio, bringing that masculine force. And the sign that would be or the tarot card that would be connected more to the sign of Aries from that perspective would actually be card number 13, which is called Death, Transformation, or also the Reaper. So it's, and why that fits so nicely is because that's the moment where we are in a rebirth, where a process has been, I don't want to say done, but a process has been taken, gone through, and so then the inevitable happens, which is a reorientation, a repolarization, a rebirth, a recognition, right? When we recognize ourselves, recognizing. So it's like something that happens cognitively when we find this perspective of the self. When we have this inside moment. And so all of that for me is connected to the card of transformation of the Reaper. And it's also what we reap from the fulfillment of a cycle. So if we take on again Pisces, being the sign that comes before Aries, it's like that culmination, that moment of fulfillment. and then through that we are born again into Aries. So I think that card fits really nicely. But both cards have a connection to Aries, and it's always going to be like that. You're always going to find more than one perspective and more than one truth that are different individual emphasized perspectives of the bigger underlying truth.
Yeah, that may be from different origins, but are complementary. In classical astrology, Mars was also the representative of Scorpio. So we can tell that, of course, Mars may be because it's the one that is bringing the sword. It's the one that is just saying like, we are down there, now we go there.
Like the warrior energy.
Yeah. So it's totally complementary. There's not a point in which something is not connected to something. Even if it looks like really, really different. There is something. It's the world of the metaphors. So metaphorically, we can talk from many perspectives, and all of them are just telling a very similar story.
Yeah. You asked earlier about the 12 labors of Hercules.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful way of kind of studying this path through mythology, and also through different types of astrology. So a lot of the things that we have said right now already are kind of this exoteric perspective of astrology, right? Where it's kind of the obvious, but it's also that which presents itself outwardly. Or how would you describe exoteric astrology?
Wow. Is that it's
without
too wide?
making a 2-hour video about it?
It's too wide, but I will feel that this is a meeting of points, like behaviors that are just meeting with behaviors and that are creating an SN. Are just telling like, wow, another moment of the playwright. So esoterically, we can go deep, and right now I feel that I can go really deep.
Well, we mentioned exoteric. So there's an exoteric perspective, which is the outward. It's like the pure outwards representation, and through the exoteric perspective, Mars is also the ruler of Aries, the planet that rules. But then there's also an esoteric astrological perspective, which is kind of more related to the more inner journey of the soul versus how it expresses outwards. Those are the kind of the one is more of the outwards expression, the other is more of the inwards expression. And I also read once that these esoteric perspectives, they are really unfolding themselves for you, like they're really noticeable for you the moment that you go on the path of discipleship, which is something that is a term describing the moment when you kind of have a certain type of awakening or a desire or a realization about yourself, and you have the will and the willpower to go forth with that a certain way of discovering yourself, of like going in on a deeper journey to really discovering your soul, and maybe even to like finding back home eventually to that origin of like wanting to find out more about the mysteries of the soul. And I read a lot of these things from Alice Bailey and a book that Alice Bailey wrote. So if that's an interesting topic, then it would be good to also just like go directly to the reference and read this book also about the 12 labors of Hercules, because it's an amazing story and there's a lot of very detailed and like really deep but easy to understand knowledge in it. And I feel that that's also the beauty of these stories, is they're so easy to understand, like from the words, but then there's so much written in between the lines.
Yes.
I also wanted to ask you, what does Mars represent in mythology? You already mentioned a little bit.
Yeah, but Mars is the god of war. So it's the one that is providing and that is supporting the changes that are just coming through battles, through encounters of opposite positions, that are just going through a common goal, that maybe this or that, but that is transformation, just switching. So Mars, or Ares for Romans, is the god of the battle, that beyond the idea of the fighting, but is the one that cares for the endeavor, that is caring for the action. So you are going to get, like, for the first time you are going to a new place, somehow you just speak to the god of Aries, because it's a new beginning. So we can understand from there that somehow Mars is a god that represents new beginnings.
Yeah, beautiful. Because the story of the 12 labors of Hercules also is connected with Mars. And maybe you should just give a quick understanding of what these stories show. It would be nice to mention that Hercules is a character in mythology that is speaking to his teacher and then commenced to go on this journey, a journey which he yet like does not yet fully understand. Though he has been trained, and he speaks of his father being from the sky, but he is very unknown, his mother being of the earth. So in a way, Hercules is a representation of also us as an individual soul, as a human being, but also beyond that, as a point of consciousness, right? So then this point of consciousness is being asked to go through the path of the 12 gates, which reference the 12 points of the Zodiac, and also specifically mentioned to go back the other way around. So as to go from Aries, because the Zodiac wheel is like moving counterclockwise, right?
Yeah.
And so Hercules is asked to go on this journey, and at each of the gate, or at each of the labor, he receives like a labor, which is a challenge. And through those challenges, he kind of learns something, he discovers something. And the first labor, referencing, of course, Aries, is Hercules is being asked to kind of like gather, to collect the mares, which is the word for a female horse, the brood mares of the son of Mars, which I think his name was Diomedes. So they are just like on these fields, and they are just like the cause of some terror and evil, of some negative things that aren't wanted anymore. So it's Hercules' task to round them up and to like put them in a secure, safe area, like a secluded area. And so Hercules does that. He also asks his friend to help him. His friend's name being, I have to check that one, Abderis. So Hercules representing kind of the soul, and Abderis kind of representing more of his personality. They together go on this journey, and then it's manageable for them to do the task. They round up all of the horses. But then the thing is that Hercules kind of goes on, and he just tells Abderis, his friend, you just deal with them alone now. You bring them to the place where they need to be brought, just alone now. He says something like, it's beneath my dignity to further do myself with this. He kind of still has this attitude, you know, where he's just like, I already have learned everything, but yet he has to go through all of the learnings again. And we often also experience that in life, right? We think we know something, we've learned the lesson, yet it unfolds itself again, because it's a wheel that keeps turning, right?
It was done. Oh, it's coming back. I thought it was done already.
So then what happens is that Abderis, which is the personality, alone, without Hercules, he's not strong enough to deal with all of these mares. And what happens is a tragedy because he just gets trampled by them. And then Hercules has to go back, and his friend is like deeply wounded and injured. He has to go back, and he has to go after the mares that are running away again, so he cannot tend to his friend. So he needs so then what ends up happening is that he dies, Abderius. So it's also like once we commence this journey, when we begin, we have to let some parts of our personality kind of go. But also we experience that if we don't act in unison with our personality, we will fail at the tasks being put in front of us, the labors that our soul is undertaking.
Yeah.
So Hercules had to experience that in this way, and he had to do everything again. And at the end, his teacher kind of told him, yeah, well, you did the task, but you did it very badly. Like, this could have been avoided. And as he goes on, there are many other challenges and tasks. And some of the things that he's kind of learned at this point already, he's only really beginning to fully understand at a later point in time. I think it was the lesson of the 10th labor of Sagittarius, where he is fully able to really like focus that, that energy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so also like some of the key insights from this myth about Hercules is this kind of interplay between, of course, the soul and the personality, but also what the mares represent, right? Because horses are traditionally a symbol of the mind, actually, the mental realm. And so these horses are this mental activity that we need to learn to harness, like to gather, to round up, so that it just doesn't branch out and cause a lot of havoc and trouble and damage.
And there is this duality, because of course it represents the mind, but also this wildness, this instinct movement of the horses. And Aries is not the mind, it's the instinct. So Hercules just going like, yeah, I know how to handle this. No, Aries is not the mind.
Which is interesting that you say that, because from the esoteric perspective, Aries does represent the mind. So there again, we have the classical polarity of the dual meanings of any occult science and studying, because also the esoteric governor, which is not Mars anymore, it's Mercury. So Mercury is also a planet that represents the mental realm, right? Communication.
That is really quick, goes into it.
Yeah, and so also the mind being this first point of where consciousness is birthed, right? So our thoughts, also the one motto of Aries, if like every sign had just like a quick motto, Aries' motto is I am, right? But we also have that famous quote, I think, therefore I am. And what happens if you turn that around? I am, therefore I think. Like either way, it just connects to this awareness of the connections between consciousness and conscious thought. I don't know if you just wanted to add something because you're
No, I just love that. Going through astrology, we just find that there are perspectives that are just this, but also that, but then this one that does not look like that also is that. And it's just pure unknown, but really knowable things.
Yeah, like the exoteric quality of Aries being Mars, planetary energy, is that of the pioneering warrior, right? And the qualities of the esoteric ruler, which is Mercury, is Mercury being like attributed with illuminating the mind, but also mediating between the soul and the personality. And we find that portrayed also within this myth with Hercules.
Wow, we could go beyond and beyond.
Yeah, there's I think one last thing that is interesting about this myth, or I mean many things interesting, but and maybe we can make a whole video about this sometime, just different constellations of stars attached to different signs. And attached to this myth is are 3 constellations, or attached to the sign of Aries, which I think is interesting because it also carries the polar energies of the masculine and the feminine. And for example, it's Cassiopeia, who represents the archetype of the enthroned queen, and is said to be also a symbol of the dominant woman, a dominant feminine force, and a symbol of matter itself.
Okay.
And the second constellation is Cetus, which represents like a sea monster that needs to be bound, that's just causing trouble, that kind of wants to like keep the soul from going into this.
Yeah, from evolving.
Yeah, it wants to like destroy the soul in that sense. So it needs to be like reined in. And the third constellation is Perseus, which is also known to be like the breaker, or the one who subdues. And together all of that is also showing some of the qualities that are needed within this Aries awakening, where we have to
We got to evolve, going into the beast, but taking the place that is for ours, that it will be Cassiopeia, but also just going through as Perseus. So of course it's entangled.
We have to we have this first birth, this first spark, but then we also kind of have to make order again, you know?
Yeah.
If we want to really tap into this full potential, we have to find a way to like make some order again, to take care of the bad thoughts, so that we can use this spark, this energy, this fire, this passion for something creative, right? For something that is in alignment with our deeper soul's desires.
Aries is a desire, just a more coherent one.
And also the stage of Aries representing understanding that we are able to do it, that we are able. So one of the underlying keynotes of also this myth related to Aries is hope. Is that what Hercules needs is to regain hope. So also this rebirthing process and this journey that the soul is on is also that moment of finding hope again, that maybe there are some things that you are not aware yet, that you can still learn, that you can still experience, that you can redirect, that you can change your form if you want to, that you can change your experience if you want to, and that you have the power to do that alone, because it's not about collectivization at this point of the story. It's about finding that ability from within yourself, from being that born self of the soul.
And empowering what Aries represents for us, those instruments. So taking again the guitar, if you're a musician and play guitar, or the pen if you're a writer, or the brush, just like reorganize the way in which we get in touch with those elements that allow Aries to express through the self, to become matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like ending with like the keynote of hope is probably a good energy to to wrap up this video with, unless there's something super important that you feel like needs to be added that we haven't covered yet. But
well, I feel like
as you always say, we can study forever.
It's infinite. Important, well, everything, but somehow is that Aries and every sign has just polarities that we can decide how to embody. So just let's be the most coherent, beautiful Aries. Let's be that part that is complementary to other parts, but let's just do it consciously, within coherence. Let's be the best Aries possible, because Aries is within everything.
Yeah, I think that was a great start. We covered like a lot of different aspects, a lot of different knowledge, which is sometimes hard to kind of know what to add and what to mention without it becoming overwhelming, because it's so easy to just jump from one thing to the next, right? But yeah, I hope that we were able to cover topics in a way that kind of makes sense and that eases into the understanding. And at any point we can go deeper into any of these topics, which would be amazing, and we'll see if we do that in the future. I'm looking really forward to continuing with the next sign, as I also learn something new. A new revelation comes to me every time I study more and more about a sign. Also the conversations and bringing together different wisdoms. And I would also be super happy if people who want to share some of their wisdom about this sign also want to share it with us, for example. I would be super interested in learning something that has not been mentioned, and would be nice to hear from other people as well, who this resonates with, right? Yeah. So also, if anybody is interested in going really deep into a certain topic, or receiving a personal reading, a personal astrology reading, a personal tarot reading, receiving private lessons about astrology, about tarot, we do all of that. So anybody who feels the call can just feel free to get in contact with us. Yeah, my name is Jenny.
And I'm Federico, and it has been lovely to share.
Yeah, it has been really lovely. Let's see if next time we have the same spot, or probably a different spot. As you can see, also the sun has set a little bit, the light has changed, the temperatures have also changed. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time.
There will be.
Enjoy your day.
Ciao.
Goodbye.